Welcome into the Michigan State Hockey Hub. We're doing a preview. Now, we've taken the last couple previews off, technical issues, holidays, and whatnot, but we are back and we have a great guest today. Connor Earegood's with us from the Michigan Daily. Connor, how are you doing?
Pretty good. I finished an essay that's due on Monday, so just
Oh,
enjoying the day
man.
off.
Is today Wednesday?
Yeah,
That's what I thought. Okay, what the hell are you doing wasting your time? And you need to be doing that Sunday night.
yeah. Well, let's just say I didn't do the readings for the class that much this semester, so I
Oh,
kind of had to cram, and then I just was ahead of schedule. But
yeah.
hey,
So we
good time
Connor
invested.
was Connor was nice enough to join us today just to run through the Michigan hockey team. If you don't somehow know, is a big matchup this weekend. Michigan against Michigan State, one of the storied rivals in all of college hockey. I don't know about you, Connor. How long have you been kind of watching and following the Michigan hockey team?
I would say, well, in second grade, I don't know if anyone's gonna remember who John Merrill was, but he was a
Yeah,
defenseman
of
for
course.
Michigan. His mom was my second grade teacher, so he came in post World Juniors with his medal. We all got to touch it. He passed it around, which I don't know why you would do that for a bunch of second graders. A gold medal you just won, but I mean he was nice enough to do it. But ever since then, I've kind of at least tracked Michigan hockey. Maybe
Yeah.
didn't watch every single game until I got to college, but
Yeah.
always
So,
been kind of watching.
so the reason why I ask is when was the last time Michigan and Michigan State both had identical records in December? This doesn't happen,
Yeah,
right?
no, like I would want to check like '07, '08 that era.
Yeah, it's been a really long time. Both teams currently sitting at 11-6-1. And we'll go ahead and jump into kind of more advanced stats and whatnot. But I want everyone to realize about this Michigan team, and feel free to jump in and correct me. They've been banged up. They had a third goalie skating as a forward. They've had injuries, illness. Top draft pick Frank Nazar has not even played, right?
Yeah, he hasn't played at all.
Yeah, he was a draft pick of the Blackhawks, I believe, last year, right?
Yep, 13th overall in
Yeah,
June. Yeah,
yeah. So, I mean, they're missing some top talent, and this team has still been really impressive. And as you can see on the screen here for the YouTube people, for the Spotify viewers or listeners, I'll go ahead and read this off to you. Michigan State power play at 20.3%, tied for 28th. Yes, that's a typo. That should be an H, not a D. The penalty kill, 84.8%. That's 10th in the nation. However, Michigan, that power play, 25.6% good for seventh. Penalty kill, 81% good for 32nd. Connor, what have you seen from the special team so far for the Wolverines?
Well, Michigan certainly started hot. I don't know if anyone remembers when they played BU. There were consecutive, not even consecutive, overlapping 5-minute majors. So Michigan had a 5-on-3 power play for about 4 minutes, and they made it count. So those numbers are a little bit propped up, and Michigan's power play has been kind of on the ropes lately. I think they have one goal in their last 15 attempts, something like
Oh,
that.
wow.
But before the Harvard series, before Thanksgiving, it was at like 33%. So there's definite need for improvement there. However, they still have a lot of offensive threats. Mackie Samoskevich has been great. There's always Luke Hughes at the point. Seamus
Mm-hmm.
Casey's also been really good coming in as a freshman defenseman. That second, power play quarterback out at the point has really made his mark. And Rutger McGroarty's also kind of stepped into his own. If anyone remembers him from NTDP, loves to get to the net, loves to kind of look for rebounds and go to the dirty areas where, yeah, he'll get hit, but he usually sticks up for himself and ends up putting it on the box score. So
Yeah, and like I said, I can't emphasize enough. This is a really talented team. They're better than their record, in my opinion. They've had some tough matchups, tough breaks. They're 10-0 when leading after two periods. Michigan State 0-5 when trailing after two periods. Is that the most important stat in the world? No, not really. You're trailing or leading with 20 minutes left. It's more likely than not you'll typically come out with, the most predicted outcome there. But it is an interesting stat when you look at it and think, man, if Michigan gets up after two periods, it might be tough. However, we've seen this Michigan State team does not ever give up. They keep fighting. At times in the past, it seems like things didn't quite go their way in the beginning. They tail off a little bit. The effort's always there. That's something to just keep in mind. Last week they were down, I believe, 4-0, came back and made it a 6-3 game and a loss to Minnesota on Saturday night. Not the outcome you want to see, but these kids are not giving up at all. I wanted to, a lot of people have talked about Michigan State's shot attempts and how they're so far up there. I believe they're top 10 in the nation in shot attempts. And it's interesting because last year and many years before, shot attempts were not something that were in the top 10 in the nation, but they're giving up a lot of shot attempts too. And it's starting to kind of equalize. Total shots 607 to 593. Now, one thing I did not expect to see, and you can kind of give us, and you know what? Even though you're a Michigan guy, I am going to allow the excuse for this because it's a fair and reasonable excuse. 3-5 in the Big Ten. What's happened so far?
Yeah, so Michigan's biggest problem, I would say, is really the amount of penalties it's taken, and some of them, frankly, haven't really been like, I don't know if the call matches the crime kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Been a
again,
lot of that in the Big Ten this year.
yeah, and I mean, if you look at Marcus Stoppa's elbowing call last week, like gets called for, I think he got a misconduct penalty. I'm pretty sure. I think he sat for 10 minutes. Or Johnny Druskinnis hit someone from behind, and they called a hit that would have been legal earlier in the game. Those are just the recent examples from Wisconsin. But I mean, they end up in the box. I think they're third or fourth in the nation in penalty minutes. Don't quote me. I should have that stat ready off the top of my head. But yeah, they're always in the box. And so when you're in the Big Ten and teams have some pretty talented forwards, have some defensemen that can move the puck, it's if you're constantly killing penalties, you're constantly down a man in the Big Ten. Bad things are going to happen.
They played some tough competition. Now they did drop. Was it Friday night to Wisconsin? Is that right?
Yes.
That was Wisconsin's first Big Ten win, and I was kind of like, "What in the world happened?" They responded on Saturday night. You're in the penalty box a lot. You're killing at 81%, which is, I wouldn't say like detrimental. It's not like slam the panic button, but it is a little bit like it's not perfect, right? It's example. It's not like you're killing 91% of penalties or 87% of penalties, and you're able to kind of justify it a little bit. So, however, now Michigan with all this talent and 5-star recruits, first round draft picks, whatever it may be, 4.06 goals per game. They're putting up 4 goals a game. Michigan State 3.39, significantly above their 2 point something from last year. Michigan State's only allowing 2.67 goals per game. Michigan comes in at 3.11 allowed. And we'll go ahead and jump into it. The goaltending. First off, Eric Portello has been there for, it feels like a really long time. I don't know why. He's just one of those players that feels like, and it's what? He's only been there 3 years?
The second season starting.
Second,
the starting
okay.
goal.
But he's just one of those players. And I know, I knew it wasn't that long, but he just feels like he's been there forever for some reason. 10-5 with a 2.94 goals against and only a .902, saving 90% of the shots. A bit low, but we've seen the talent from him in the past. Noah West. I don't know anything about Noah West, so you'll have to fill us in. 1-1-1. That's aesthetically pleasing with a 2.92 goals against and a .920 save percentage. Tell us about these goalies and how have they been playing?
Yeah, so Eric Portillo last season was arguably one of the best goaltenders in the Big Ten. I think that's easy to say. I want to say he was up for Did he win? No, I think he was co-freshman. I think he won goaltender of the year. No, that was Justin Close. He was in the running for goaltender. He hasn't been as sharp this season. Granted, there's been a lot of turnover in the defense in front of him. When you lose a guy like Owen Power, lose a guy like Nick Blankenberg, you're bound to probably end up with some more goals in your net, especially when you have a lot of freshmen filling those roles that haven't learned the lessons yet in where they're supposed to be, what guys are going to do. Obviously they have to acclimate to the NCAA. He's started off a little bit slow against Lindenwood, and I think that's part of why the stats look a little bit worse. I mean, he just had a game against Harvard where he stopped, I think, 39 shots out of like 40, 42, something like that, somewhere in there. So he's had good games against good competition. It's just bringing it on a nightly basis, I would say, has been a problem. And when you get, I mean, he started every game last season, played in every game last season for Michigan. Like when you get used to that degree as a goaltender, there can be some wear and tear. There can be some overuse issues that arise. Noah West has been fantastic in relief. He actually kind of got thrown into the role against Penn State because Eric Portillo was out with an illness. So he didn't make the trip out to State College. And so with a couple hundred fans, I don't know if you've ever been out to Pagula, but a couple hundred fans breathing right down his neck in their student section.
Yeah.
I realize no one can see
Great
him.
rink. I haven't been there, but I'm not gonna lie. I love watching a game there. It's wild. It's
Yeah.
crazy. It's fun. It's good for college hockey.
Yeah, and they're just booing him and chanting at him right behind him, and he played two fantastic games. The first, Michigan ended up losing in, what was it, 3-1, I think, something like that. Just a bad showing by the entire team. I think Michigan only had a dozen or so shots that game. They couldn't really exit the zone. Penn State was having a field day, and that's a team that shoots a lot. So granted, that might inflate the stats, but the next night played a phenomenal game, got Michigan to overtime when they blew a huge lead they had and ended up winning it with some timely stops. But people probably don't remember this, but he was a starter for Robert Morris during the COVID season. And one, I believe, he was on the all-rookie team for Atlantic Hockey. So he's a capable goaltender. Honestly, Noah West could be a starter for a lot of teams. Just probably not a Big Ten team, I wouldn't say. But that doesn't mean he's not capable, and it doesn't mean that he might get a nod this weekend. He might be able to put in a good entry on his resume.
Yeah, and Michigan State's been running with one goalie, Dylan St. Cyr. Now, Pierce Charleston, who had seen time in the past, I'm sure Michigan fans probably recognize that name, or have at least seen him before. Um, Dylan St. Cyr is playing really, really well. Now, it was a tough weekend against Minnesota. That's an extremely, in my opinion, the most talented team that I have seen go up against Michigan State this year, and maybe one of the more talented teams in the nation, right? They're a top 5 team.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the defense didn't do a ton to help him. So his stats this past weekend didn't look great. There's a couple he may want back, but still, I think it's going to be a good matchup. Now, as we look at the chart, the line chart here, and of course, what I do is I always pull a recent line chart. So there could be changes. There could be, this is not set in stone by any means. But as we look here, I think every Michigan State fan is going to know the last name Hughes, right?
Yeah.
And have some bad memories of the last name Hughes. I'm just now noticing this. Is that 3 New Jersey Devils all on the? That's so cool. I hope that they all make it, and I hope that they all play like that. I don't know why. I just think that's cool.
Yeah, the Michigan Devils.
Yeah. So walk us through here. Tell us a few names that we need to know. Just kind of tell us about this lineup.
Yeah, Michigan State fans should be really big fans of Canada in the World Juniors because as far as we know, Adam Fantilli is not going to be playing this weekend. So that's Michigan's arguably their best offensive player.
A top 3 draft pick of this upcoming draft.
Absolutely. He's going to be top 2, 100%.
Yeah.
And a few scouts I've talked to, there's a conversation, depending on where the team is that's going to draft him, that a team might want him for his overall skills. But that's another topic for another day.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm a Chicago Blackhawks fan, so I will whisper. I kind of want him to go to the Blackhawks if they get
He played for the Steel. He's got those Chicago roots, but he's probably going to be out this week. So it looks like someone's going to have to play alongside Dylan Duke and Mackie Samoskevich. I don't think those two will be broken up just because they played all of last season together, or almost all of last season together. They have really good chemistry. Really, you just got to find someone to either play center or move one of them to the center spot. Funny enough, I just wrote an article about Michigan's center depth. They're not real good at the face-off dot, and frankly, they play such a reactive system, dynamic system. They don't really have someone that's in a defined center role, which I've always thought was interesting under the new coaching. I would think they're probably going to run Nick Granowitz at center, Jackson Hallam, maybe TJ Hughes, I would think. Gavin Brindley as well. So maybe some combination of those guys are going to be down the middle. And I think they're going to run McGroarty and Brindley back together again. They've been kind of together almost all the season. I think besides 2 or 3 games, Brandon Rado kind of split them up to see if he could get some better depth scoring. And it didn't work as well as when those two were together. So I think those are McGroarty and Brindley together, and Sam Moskevich and Duke are the names to watch out for if you're a Michigan State fan. And then on the defense, Jacob Truscott and Luke Hughes were, I believe they had the highest plus minus of any defense pair last season, and they've certainly continued that this season. Just playing insane minutes for Michigan. Seamus Casey, as I kind of hinted at earlier, has been really good as a freshman, dynamic skater, really, really good at kind of reading plays from the point and jumping up in the offense. He's also pretty quick, so he can get back and not really leave his assignment. He's been good with Ethan Edwards as well. That's kind of a newer pairing to put those two together. And then Johnny Drew Skinnis, I don't even know how to describe his game because he's so physical, and he kind of just burst onto the scene against Minnesota because that was when Michigan's roster was kind of scraping the bare minimum when they had an illness outbreak. And so he just kind of ran with that opportunity, and he's been in the lineup ever since. He and Luca Fantilli kind of complement each other really well. Drew Skinnis, very physical. Fantilli is a very good passer, good at initiating breakouts. And then Jake Kieran may play forward. He might play defense. He's kind of a Swiss Army knife. He'll be good in a defensive role, I would predict.
Dylan Duke's a fun player to watch. I like watching him play. Nolan Moyle was actually a Michigan State commit at one point in time back in the day. So, man, it feels like that's been forever ago too. So, yeah, and, even with, your best player potentially being out, this team's deep enough and talented enough that you won't see a huge drop off. I mean, obviously, anytime you lose your best player, there's going to be a drop off, but they have enough that, this doesn't make it a cakewalk, right?
No.
Exactly.
And Michigan played without Fantilli before against Minnesota. He was out with that same illness outbreak. It's been honestly a really common theme for Michigan to have some of their key players out all season. And like you said, the record's not indicative of the talent. That it's going to be like that this weekend, I would predict, for that team. I don't want to call a shot, right, as to who's going to play on that top line, but I would think like either Jackson Hallam or maybe TJ Hughes would get a shot up there. And they're still very, very talented playmakers, very fast. Who knows how that's going to turn out, because you can't really replace Adam Fantilli. No one can, because he's just such a talented, and like his play style as a playmaking power forward is just it's fun to watch, honestly, as a journalist.
Yeah, great player. I guess I can't make you do predictions, right? Because you're a journalist, you're not allowed to do predictions, right?
Oh, I can do predictions.
All right, then let's do predictions. Who do you have Friday? Who do you have Saturday?
Friday is at Mon.
And it's a sold-out crowd, by the way. Officially a sellout. I talked to somebody, Dan, my buddy Dan, in the ticket office. First sellout in a while. Mun's going to be rocking.
I think if Michigan State is going to win a game this weekend, I think it's Friday.
Mm-hmm.
I see Michigan State winning Friday, just because I think as Michigan adapts to not having Fantilli, even though they have experience without him, adapting to fully having someone else in that 1C role, and really tries to rebound after a Wisconsin series that didn't go the way they wanted it to. I mean, anytime you drop a game to Wisconsin, that's a bad weekend.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve, especially against a Michigan State team that's pushing back a lot more than they have in any season that any guy on that roster has ever played against. That being said, I think at home, I think they'll be all right. I can predict Michigan winning that one, but I think it'll be close. And if you remember last year too at Munn, and the reason why I think that matters more here, I mean, Michigan State almost won at Munn last season. I believe it was a 3-2 game. Michigan State was pressing with the net empty last year, and took a Matty Beniers legacy game for Michigan to escape with a win. So even when Michigan State has had poor seasons, like, it's the rivalry.
Yep.
Every player is going to elevate their game. Every player is going to come out guns a-blazing. So I think it'll be a series split. I think the records, I don't know how long the records or when the records have last been tied in January. I know you're saying December earlier.
Oh, yeah.
I think the records are going to be tied again.
Okay. Michigan State sports has not had a ton of luck recently. The football team was disappointing. They lost to Michigan. The basketball team started off hot, really kind of a downward spiral, injuries, everything. Michigan, we college football playoffs, Big Ten championship, basketball team went head to head with Kentucky, who Michigan State beat. And I'm just asking, can Michigan State hockey get a little bit of this taste and take a little something away from Michigan? Give me Michigan State Friday night, and I'm going to do the biggest cop out in the world and go with a tie Saturday night.
Ooh.
So I will not go a split. I will not go a sweep. I'm doing the huge cop out. I'm too afraid to say anything. Tie for Saturday night. Now, how big is this series? Well, you have Michigan State coming off a series where they got swept. It was 1-2, them in Minnesota. Minnesota got some huge points, right? 6 points last weekend, pushes them up 24 total points. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see the Big Ten standings in front of you. Those of you on Spotify, it goes like this: Minnesota, Penn State, Michigan State, Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, Wisconsin. Please, everyone, note that Michigan has played less games. I know they're down there, and I know I was making fun of them for it at the beginning of the year, just because it's not something we get to see often. It's not a visual we see often. So Wisconsin has 3 points. They got those 3 last weekend. Notre Dame 9, Michigan 9, and then there's a bit of a gap. 15 for Ohio State, Michigan State 17, Penn State 19, 24 from Minnesota. So some big points at hand this weekend. A nice opportunity to, they're heading into the holiday break, and you need to kind of take some wins here if you can get them. I mean, it's just big points and big momentum, and I'm sure a lot of players are kind of looking forward to the break a little bit. Have an opportunity to rest up, especially the freshmen who probably just have drinking from a water hose. But what are your thoughts so far on the Big Ten standings? Any surprises? Any predictions on the Big Ten standings for the second half?
Penn State, I think, personally surprised me a little bit. I know they beat Ohio State in the Big Ten tournament last season, and they got some good momentum, and they've been playing to their strengths a lot. Really hard-nosed, will check, will defend, and isn't afraid to just put a puck on net and see what happens with it. So I think being second, though, Penn State, I wouldn't have predicted that. I would have thought someone like Notre Dame would have been up there, or Michigan contending for that, or even OSU. Certainly, it's a shock to me to see Michigan and Notre Dame both kind of down there after really good seasons, making the Big Ten semifinal in the NCAA tournament last year. Michigan is going to be down 2 games until it plays Ohio State in, I think, the second week of January, right after the NTDP game, because the outdoor game, something with the scheduling, they did it that way. I'm not really sure why. I thought they were supposed to play all the teams in one half and all the teams in the other. But what do you know? The Big Ten sometimes makes the rules as it goes. And, hey, it'll make that outdoor game a little more fun.
Yeah.
But Michigan really needs the points here. They need to – I don't think they've gotten a sweep in Big Ten play at all. They've had some splits, some OT losses, OT wins. They really need to get 6 points if they can get it. I don't know if they can, because Michigan State's having a phenomenal season. And as you kind of referred to, Dylan St. Cyr has been phenomenal in the net.
Yeah, it's going to be a really fun matchup. At the end of the day, I think we can both agree it's just a win or lose, Michigan or Michigan State. It's just fun to know that these two rivals are in a spot that it matters. It's not just a Michigan's at the top, we have to sweep Michigan State or else it's upset. What happens then if you don't sweep them? Michigan fans are upset. Oh, we didn't sweep them. Michigan State fans at the bottom of the barrel thinking, oh, this is our Super Bowl, right? Type of a talk. Like, I'm so glad that we are both in a position where we're talking about finishing top 3 in the Big Ten, climbing rankings. They both have similar goals, meaning, finishing the top 3, top 4 for Michigan State probably, but it's just refreshing to see.
Yeah. I can't speak for Michigan, but from what folks we've talked to in the program have said, they're thrilled that Michigan State is having a good season, because it makes that rivalry game just a little bit more meaningful, right? I mean, in the playoff, an 8-0 win, like, yeah, it's a huge win, and players remember that and they think of it fondly. But sometimes it's those 4-3 wins, and sometimes it's those close losses that really put a rivalry in context and kind of make sure it keeps going.
Yeah, and I was talking to you before we jumped on here to record how college hockey fans typically are so much more respectful than a lot of the basketball and football talking heads that we see out on Twitter, the world's most peculiar app. So there's nothing but respect towards Michigan for me, and I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. I even had a great interaction with a Michigan person on Twitter, and it wasn't even about Michigan State. They just decided to compliment Michigan State, and it was awesome. That's the stuff we like to see. There's no need to be ugly this weekend. So anyone listening to this, just be positive, cheer for your team. But Connor, thank you so much for coming on today. Why don't you tell everyone where they can find your work and your Twitter?
Yeah, you can find the Michigan Daily's coverage at michigandaily.com, and our newspaper's Twitter handle is at the Block M. So if you're interested in all Michigan sports news from football down to hockey to non-revenue, that's the place to go.
Yeah, and you can go on there. And it's important to read the other team's stuff too, and this is why I bring people like you on. I'm not going to have the insight by just even just watching them. You have to have someone who follows it closely. So we really appreciate you coming on, and hopefully we can find a time in the future to have you back on.
Yeah, not a problem. Thank you for having me.
All right, you have a good weekend.
All right, take care.